Thank you so much. It's just fabulous to see the chat window and see so many different fellows and teachers. And I see someone from Nepal here as well. And beautiful to hear you all off mute as well. I couldn't be happier to be having this conversation with one of my most dear people in my life, who has been an example of so many different things: compassion and love and care and excellence and so many values to me. So this is going to be a very informal conversation. I'm going to start by asking Anu some questions that I think may be interesting for all of you. And then there are some questions that many of you have sent in from before. And then Ellie is going to help us curate questions that keep coming in. So as we are speaking and you're listening to Anu, please do use the chat window to share any thoughts you have, any questions. This is a learning space where we would love to learn from each other as well. So don't just put questions there, but also just put thoughts and any ideas that are going on in your mind, so that we really know each other through this time. And with that, I'm gonna welcome Anu and first just ask Anu, how are you doing, Anu, today? And how are you feeling coming into this webinar?
Thanks, Shaheen, for inviting me. I'm excited, a little nervous also, and looking forward to this 1 hour together.
Beautiful. Thanks, Anu. So we're gonna launch right into the questions, Anu, and to start with a very big question. According to you, what is compassion and why does it matter?
Shaheen, let me give my personal understanding. I think compassion is human kindness leading to reaching out. If it stays within you as kindness and doesn't lead to action, then I wouldn't call it compassion. Accepting and understanding people without judgment. I think judgment and compassion don't go together. I mean, we all have it, but to that extent, it reduces our compassion. Compassion is not the same as feeling sorry for someone, because feeling sorry could produce guilt, and in my experience, guilt is a very debilitating emotion and depletes your energy. On the other hand, if feeling sorry mobilizes you into action, then it could be compassion. Dictionary, one of the meanings defines it as charity. But I have a few questions about that. If you are doing charity because you feel guilty or you want to show off to society, to me, that's not compassion. Compassion is not the same as sacrificing. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. As a mother, you do many things for your children, unpleasant, you do out of your way, and it doesn't seem like sacrificing at all. But you do half of it for your mother-in-law, it seems like sacrifice. And I feel compassion starts with your being compassionate towards yourself and embrace yourself with all your shortcomings and your limitations. Compassion to yourself does not mean that you are perfect or that you are superior to others. Let me give you an example. A pot which needs to give water to people cannot give if it's empty. It has to fill itself completely, in our human case with compassion, to be able to give it to others. So I think this is a very important thing. I think compassion can take many forms. It could mean giving your time, your knowledge, and the best example is collaborating in the world to find the vaccine today. It could be donating your organ, like a kidney, to save a human life. Give your resources like money to help a person or a cause. And I put money the last because I think relatively it's easier to write a check than give yourself. So these are,
Yeah, beautiful. Anu, can I probe a little bit on one
Yeah,
thing you
please.
said? You talked about self-compassion. Can you make that a little bit real in terms of how you do that in your own life? And the reason I'm asking this question, especially at this time, we feel so compelled to help others. There is so much wrong in the world right now, so much that needs to be fixed, that often I think, especially as educators or social workers, we forget to look after ourselves. So can you maybe share some practices from your own life or ways that you have looked at
Sure.
this?
I find that if you are very judgmental towards yourself, the same thing will happen in your being judgmental. And being judgmental, being full of anger or hatred in an extreme case, is not a good thing for yourself. And again, you cannot give from that position to others. That wouldn't be authentic, genuine. So I don't mean you love yourself means you become a narcissist and you fall in love and you want to wear the most expensive clothes, have the best of things. No, not that way. Be at peace with yourself. And in my life, meditation has helped me a lot. I am quite a judgmental and reactive person, but over years with meditation, both have gone down. That gives me more energy. So, in fact, to your question, social workers and all need more energy. So, start by being very much at peace with yourself, look after yourself, exercise, sleep well, whatever needs to be done, and then you'll have more energy to be compassionate and reaching out. So the two go together. It's not one or the other. It's not if you're compassionate to yourself, you have less time and less energy. It's not a question of time. It's your mental makeup.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. And can you share any personal story of an experience you have had with compassion?
Yeah.
Um,
Shaheen, very often we assume and take it for granted that your close family members are there to give you compassion. You take it for granted. I'm very fortunate to have a daughter named Meher who has showered me with compassion. While at times she gently and at times not so gently points out my shortcomings so that I can improve, but most often she gives me unconditional love, which I did not experience from my mother. Normally, you associate unconditional love with your mother. Her acceptance and understanding of my idiosyncrasies is healing. And just because she is my daughter, I would not like to take this rare gift for granted. So I really feel she's made me so much at peace with myself that I have a chance to develop whatever I want in myself. And she partners me also in so many people who had been compassionate, but nobody came as close to me.
and Anu, it's such a gift, as you said, not to take for granted compassion from a family member. Can you share a little bit about when you say she enables me to be at peace with myself? What does she do? What are the actions and the beliefs that she holds, the actions she does that have made you feel that way?
And there are so many that it could take the whole time illustrating them. But say, for example, in every thoughtfulness in every step. Just as soon as the lockdown was announced, she brought me to her house. Now that many daughters have done that to the parents, but the way she has looked after me, created time for me, though she's up to her neck with work. I'm what do you call, technologically illiterate. So I'm every second going to her, Mayor, help me with this, Mayor, help me with that, without making me feel I'm a nuisance. She does it so graciously. She's made me feel that look after, like she doesn't fuss over my food. She says, Mom, you look after yourself. But I feel so much at home. Of course, the credit goes to Feroz, her husband, and the children, but the main person is Meher. And just, and she pushes me. It's not that she blindly accepts me. If I'm doing something, she says, Mom, that wasn't nice, you know. So I think she checks me, she guides me. Yeah.
Thank you. It's so really lovely to hear you speak about Mayor. Someone has written in the chat box that brought tears to their eyes to hear that. Anu, this is a group of a lot of people on the call who are educators and obviously have come to this webinar because of a deep belief in compassion. When you think about the role of education in building compassion, and in general also how compassion is developed, can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, I thought of it and I said, if I were a student, I would learn compassion if my teacher, and these are the things I would expect, understands and accepts my uniqueness. I'm not the same as everyone. I'm a unique person. My background, where do I come from? Have you ever bothered to find out what kind of family I come, what kind of stresses I come from, what motivates me, my strengths, which may not be in academics? Have you ever bothered? Then I think you are compassionate. Another thing I would expect my teachers acknowledge incremental improvements in me. For example, if I had failed in a subject and got 20%, and next time I get 30, she does not look at me as a failure and say, you stupid, you again failed. But pats me on my back and said, you've done so much better. You can do still better. Then I would feel she's compassionate. If in my class, kind deeds are recognized and valued and not just academic brilliance. If as a class we are exposed to people who are less than we are, then she's helping us to build compassion. But if a teacher can achieve all this, she will be my role model and I will learn from her behavior and not by her preaching. Any amount of value teaching will never teach me compassion as seeing her being compassionate towards me and other students.
Yeah, I'm seeing such...
You can add something.
Yeah, no, I'm seeing such a consistent theme, Anu, in everything you've said so far, in little actions, little acts of kindness that build compassion, and the importance of doing those acts of kindness and how that spreads to people around you. I really like that. On a lighter note, Anu, you and I are often joking about your great compassion for people and your not so great compassion for animals. And I wonder how you reconcile both of those. And my question is, can you be selectively compassionate?
I think for most human beings, compassion is selective because we are not evolved people. We are not saints. We have our prejudices. We have our emotions not so positive towards a set of people or one person. In a way, selective compassion helps us to channelize our energy, time, and resource to a few people and causes and demonstrate results. I'm not saying the rest you become antagonistic or harm them, but if you mobilize, for example, Shaheen, you are drawn and compassionate towards the cause of educational inequity problem for the underprivileged and has shown great results in impacting the lives of thousands of students. If you felt strongly towards health causes also, now towards the migrant workers, would you be able to do such a good job in education, or will you dissipate your energy and do a little here and a little there? I had very little or no compassion towards animals, but over time, I am a little more accepting towards dogs. But I think I will have to be reborn several times to cultivate compassion towards cats, snakes, and most other animals.
So Mare has just got a beautiful new puppy, and I think the puppy has also shaped you, Anu, a little bit in terms of your compassion to dogs.
I had a puppy myself, and I loved her. She was called Piranha because she was not compassionate to other people. She picked them a lot. But I liked her and not other dogs. But Lara, Mare's dog, and with time, I'm not gaga, but I'm not against also.
Yeah, yeah. Anu, can you talk about another couple of people in your life? They could be larger than life figures or people that you know who you feel have really embodied compassion.
Yeah, sure. I would say Jo, whom you know also. This is an American lady who lives in India, and she had two children of her own, lovely children. And someone said there is a little girl thrown away in the garbage bin, eaten by dogs or someone, and it's definitely going to be a problem. I mean, retarded or some problems will be there. But she and her husband opened their hearts and home and took that child. Not only did they take that child, but looked after her with such compassion, love. And with age, she started getting worse and worse, physically and mentally. But they would never leave her alone in the sense with servants. They would be there personally. They would take her for picnics, outings. And that to me, not only that, but based on that, she started an NGO for families to leave their children and train them and help the others. So to me, that was a wonderful experience. Another one would be Harsh Mandar, an IAS officer who resigned when 2002 Gujarat riots took place, and as a protest he resigned. And in this migration problem, I've seen videos of him going out and feeding thousands when all of us are so scared of getting the disease. He's out in the sun looking after, and the Delhi sun, looking after thousands of migrants. His mask was not of good quality. I told him, change your mask, and he did. But I just admire this kind of compassion. And then in the evenings, you would write stories, make videos, so others get also charged with compassion. Shaheen, sorry, but I have to mention, you are one of the role models who has also really helped me to be compassionate. And I have seen your compassion. The only thing your selective compassion is, you have to be underprivileged and a student. If you are privileged, you don't have much sympathy for those people. You will tolerate us, but not much sympathy. So I learned a lot. And I
Yeah.
admire the way your home is open to our fellows, their families, when they are. Right now, when we were collecting funds for COVID, you started collecting for a fellow's father, 9 lakhs for cancer patient. And I said, Shaheen, how can we reach out to each and every one who needs? And she says, that's your choice. But you decided to collect. So all of you are great examples of compassion.
Yeah. Thanks, Anu. I mean, as you were speaking, I was remembering a couple of things. One, with your story of Jo Chopra, one of the things I wanted to share with the group is she had her daughter's wheelchair was upholstered in the same upholstery as the living room curtains, so that she would feel like the sofa had the same fabric, her wheelchair would have the same fabric. And I just felt those little things. This was a child who was not able to see, who would not know what kind of fabric she was sitting on, but Jo wanted her to feel so included. And I also wanted to share with Harsh that in my last conversation with Harsh Mandar, he gave me your example, Anu, and he said, you know, Anu watched my video of migrants, and she in the video noticed that my mask was the wrong kind of mask, and so she reached out to me and told me to go and buy the right kind of mask. So I think the beautiful thing about compassion is the kind of connections and circles of compassion that you start to see happening. And before we go on to more questions, I wanted to just share one of my favorite stories of compassion that was told to me by a very, very dear friend of mine who's an embodiment of compassion called Nipun Mehta. But Nipun tells a story of a friend of his called Julio. And Julio was one day in America in the middle of winter. He was walking down the road and a man approached him, an adolescent with a jacket and a hoodie covered like this. And as he came close to Julio, he pulled out a knife. And Julio obviously was a little bit scared. But instead of reacting in the way that we would normally react, he looked at the kid and he said, "Kid, it's a really cold evening and you don't look like you have a warm enough hoodie on. Would you like my jacket?" And the kid gets very taken aback. The kid by this time has already stolen Julio's wallet and moved away. But he turns back and he says, "Yeah, sure, I'll take the jacket." And so Julio gives him his jacket and the kid turns to run away again. And as he runs away, Julio says, "Wait a minute, kid. When's the last time you've eaten a good hot meal? There's a diner just down the road. Why don't we go together and have dinner?" This is the same kid who's just robbed him at knife point. And so Julio and this kid go together and they have dinner, and over dinner, Julio is asking him questions and the kid is opening up and telling him about all the problems in his background. And at the end of the dinner, the bill comes and Julio smiles at the kid and says, "You know, kid, I'm older than you, and under normal circumstances, I would have loved to pay for the bill, but you have my wallet." And the kid smiles and he takes the wallet and he slides it across the table and gives it back to Julio. And Julio says, "No, kid, that's not enough. I need your knife as well." And the kid takes his knife and he hands it to Julio, and the two of them get up and they walk their separate ways. And who knows what happens in the life of that boy, but I've often thought of how many acts of practicing compassion Julio must have done to be able to react in a moment where most of us would have faced physical fear with compassion and not with anger. So just wanted to share that story. And
Beautiful story. And what I love is that he showed such exceptional courage and compassion but with no demand from the child that don't do this ever again, or no preaching, nothing, giving him his freedom to lead the way. But I don't think this child will ever forget this experience. But your compassion shouldn't make people feel beholden to you and act the way you want them to act.
So Anu, linked to that, is there a particular like inspiration that where you have found compassion, a quote, a book, a film that has really touched you and shown you a different side of compassion?
Oh, many. I find Gandhiji, for example, his readings. I didn't ever, unfortunately, know him, but he has touched my life. He is my hero. I love him. I find Geoffrey Canada's Whatever It Takes book very inspirational. For example, just the title, Whatever It Takes, he's willing to do it. That's what he's saying, to help his Black community to come up and have equal opportunities and go backwards, backwards, backwards. Still they are in their mother's womb, he's going backwards. Nearer home, our Sandeep's book, Grey Sunshine, is an inspiration. An American who comes to India, works diligently with full devotion for Teach for India for 10 years, and writes this book by going from place to place and learning about the students, the fellows, the alums, and continues to work. To me, these are wonderful books which have helped me tremendously.
Great. So Anu, with that, I'm gonna just bring some of the questions from the group to you. And there's a beautiful one that right now came on the chat box about the relationship between courage and compassion. Can you share some thoughts there?
I think the more compassionate you are, the more courage you will have. Because courage, your fear is the opposite of courage, right? And fear, again, depletes your energy. Fear makes you suspicious of others. Fear narrows your horizon, whereas courage increases it. So little act of courage, little act of compassion, together it keeps going. And unfortunately, most of us say human beings cannot do this, cannot be so courageous, cannot be so compassionate. And we put limits on ourselves. Whereas the story you gave of how Gandhiji behaved, there is no limit. I have my favorite story, Shaheen. We all have the ordinary side in us and the extraordinary side in us. It's easier to define ourselves as ordinary because then you can say, what can you expect? I'm just an ordinary human being. But if you push yourself and get in touch with your extraordinariness, you'll get in touch with your courage, your compassion. It's a deep, deep well which we haven't tapped. We have a lot of goodness within us which we haven't tapped.
Yeah, I remember one thing when you last told me about this idea of we have these two sides to us, the extraordinary and the ordinary. One other thing you said, Anu, which has been very valuable for me, is at times when we are feeling very ordinary, we need to remind ourselves and maybe have someone else pull us up and remind us that we have the extraordinary. And at times when we're feeling too extraordinary, we need someone to pull us back down to the ground and remind us that we are just like everybody else and we're very ordinary. So
absolutely. Time for your own growth, you don't need an outsider to do it. You know you are have a bloated ego and you're showing off. And you know yourself that you're pretty ordinary. And when you're whining and, oh, poor me, you know you're being your ordinary self and you have to pull yourself. The more you depend on your inner resource, the stronger you will be.
Yeah, but Anu, just going a little bit off topic, but I think it's very valuable to hear your thoughts. A lot of what you're talking about is awareness, right? Self-awareness, mindfulness. How do you cultivate that? Because often our reactions come from a place of not being aware of these things about ourselves. So what has helped you, and especially as someone talking to educators, what do educators need to do themselves to deepen their own self-awareness?
Shine, I wouldn't limit to educators. It's for all human beings.
Yeah,
All needed. And it's a journey. I have started the journey. I am miles and miles away and will never reach destination. The day I leave the destination, I'll become Saint Tannuaka, which I don't think I'll ever do. Uh, so it's my journey started when I went for Vipassana meditation after my husband died. And you have 10 hours of meditation where you reflect. It was difficult. Not speaking was not at all difficult for the 10 days. But sitting down and meditate, my mind was saying, enough is enough. But you have to look within. And I found at that time I was struggling with accepting death, accepting the responsibility of taking on the chairmanship of Thermax. But because I had reflected so much on death, 14 months later when my son died, I was able to take it very much with equanimity. So I became aware that death is inevitable. And once you accept death, it gives you courage. It gives you a lot of energy because most of us dread death of ourselves. Not so much, we say it's not for myself, but for the family. But behind that, I'll tell you why there is fear of death for myself also. When COVID, all the social media and lockdown happened, in my meditation, I couldn't focus. You don't have to focus. I wasn't just able to meditate. I was thinking of death of myself. Will it be painful? How will it be? It will have to be away from my family. Oh my, if anything happened to me, my Firoz, my this, that, and the other, all my children, everything. And then I heard about the migrant workers and their plight. I just felt so blessed that how could I be so self-absorbed in my own anxiety when others are going through living death. So the more you are aware of other people's pain, the more you will be ready to let go of your self-absorption. And it helps you, makes your life meaningful. So it's worth an exercise. But at times you'll again become not so aware, you'll become selfish. So it will be a little zigzag, but hopefully it will not be such huge ups and downs, with me.
yeah,
But you have to have the discipline to do the things which helps you. So I meditate every day for an hour, and that does help me. But let me tell you, that does not mean I've become equanimous, peaceful, accept everything. Not at all. My family will tell you 10,000 times when I reacted, being judgmental. But it's much better, much better.
yeah,
I don't know if I've answered you also.
yeah.
I go round and round.
No, I remember one other thing you told me, Anu, when we were talking about death. I don't remember when, a long time ago. You said the real tragedy is not to die. The real tragedy is not to live fully while you're living, and so many
One
people.
thing, but Shaheen, also, the tragedy is not when someone you love dies, but when you haven't reached out to that person when that person was alive. I think that's a tragedy. Another tragedy is you don't question yourself and don't grow all your life. And for example, people have self-made beliefs that after a certain age, you can't do this. You can't make good friends. You can't do this. You don't have the energy to reach out to others. All this is nonsense. Unless you're bedridden or something like that, you can be as active as long as you can.
Yeah. I know there's a question here on what is the difference between compassion, empathy, and pity. And is pity a positive or a negative emotion?
To me, pity is a negative emotion because you pity someone, that means you're not equals. You know, you pity a person who you think, poor, she needs my help. So you are in the helping position, she's in the receiving position. And I don't know, somehow pity, I read a book called Beware of Pity. And it really made me realize the same sympathy also is you want to do things for that person. You don't help that person to be independent and grow and stop having you as a crutch. It's your need to keep that person as a crutch, you know. So empathy to me is good because you understand the pain, but you respect that this person is independent and can grow. And I give you an example. In Akanksha at Shalini's school, one of our schools, they put up their concert. And it was such a mediocre concert, such a mediocre. And everyone clapped and clapped. And I said, why did you all clap? I asked some of the friends. And they said, poor people, they are from this background. So how nice. So you are lowering your standard because you pity them and you are not helping them to give their best potential. So do you see how pity doesn't help a person to grow? And you feel good, you think it's compassion. I feel so much. If it was compassion, you will push them to give out their best.
Yeah.
Because they have the potential.
Yeah.
For example, our schools, they're not clean. I'm not willing to accept that you have so many things to do. Your teachers are so busy, your students can't be expected to pick up. Why not? First 10, 15 minutes, just clean up your surroundings.
Yeah. So Anu, linked to that, what's the balance between being compassionate and holding people to a high bar of performance, holding them accountable, and especially when you're giving feedback to somebody, how do you hold that balance so somebody feels you are coming from a place of care, but still holding them to a high bar?
I think compassion and holding people to a high bar are synonymous. And if that person experiences compassion, and for example, as I said, Mayor has pointed out very often where I've gone wrong. At that moment, I have not liked it. I don't think anyone likes being told where you're wrong. But I'm enveloped with compassion. My relationship is solid. But the same thing, if it's said by someone who I think doesn't care for me, will have a different impact on me. So compassion and holding someone to high standards is very important. One of the important things is everyone must become extraordinary. And that is what we are saying when we say holding to high standard. And I'm not saying for everything, if you keep, every minute I open my mouth, you say, no, your English is wrong. No, your construction is wrong. If you keep nitpicking, pick up a few things and hold them and help them to come up. And they'll bless you because everyone likes to tap their best.
Yeah, I love that statement that everyone must become extraordinary. And I feel that's our role. Like, what role can we play with the people around us to help them on that journey of being extraordinary? Anu, there are questions around, like, is there a limit to being compassionate? That sometimes it feels like it takes a toll on your mental health, that you get overwhelmed by concern for somebody. That leads to a lot of negative feelings yourself, a lot of emotions yourself. How do you deal with that?
I think compassion energizes. I've never found it having a toll on me, but with compassion, I forget myself. I feel compassion towards the outside world, but not to myself. And don't sleep, don't eat. Then, yes, I will feel very tired. But by itself, compassion energizes. Gandhiji felt compassionate and went on fast without water or food for 15 days except a little lemon juice or something. How did he? And he was full of energy. But we are not Gandhiji. So we will confuse pity with compassion. If you feel sorry for someone, you will lose a night's sleep. You will not be. But if you have done your best, then leave it to God. And you are not God. You cannot change everyone's lives. You will not be able to reach out to everyone. If you are compassionate towards yourself, I don't think it takes a toll on you.
Yeah, I think that balance of focusing on self-compassion and compassion together is a very important thing to remember.
And don't expect outcomes to come the way you want. They will not. You may give food to all the community people who are going hungry, and yet some may die. Some will have COVID and die. But you do your best, whatever that is.
Yeah. And Anu, like right now in the middle of the pandemic, people's emotions are even more up and down. We're hearing of just such a high incidence of anxiety, stress, mental illness. Any advice you have on how do you stay positive in the middle of a challenge or in the middle of a crisis?
Yeah. You know, my father used to work for Godrej, and he used to say that the Godrej safe, where you keep your jewelry and all that, has a unique quality that when fire happens, the safe is absolutely cool, not get hot, and keeps everything within it safely. Similarly, many things can happen around you, but the more you learn to be equanimous with yourself, I'm not saying I'm practicing it. There are times when I have sleepless nights. There are times, but those are when I'm in my limitations. But there are times when I've been able to pull myself out of my limitation and see the larger picture. And look, definitely calming ourselves is very important. If you go on work, you'll be less efficient. So calm yourself, do breathing, do some pranayama or some meditation, sit down. You know the story, if you want to catch a butterfly and you go running all over, will you ever catch it? But you sit still and maybe it will come and sit on your shoulder. So calm yourself the more there is turmoil all around you. But if you keep thinking that I'm so kind, I'm so touched, see how upset I am. Even when someone dies, people suffer thinking, see how much that's an example of love. No, that's not an example. That's neurotic behavior. So learn to calm yourself even when you face the worst calamities around you.
Yeah, I love that. There's a question that's just come in, Anu, which I love, which is, as a teacher, if you have a very difficult child in your classroom and that child is like a nuisance and driving you a little bit crazy, does that child also deserve compassion?
More than anyone. That behavior is saying, please give me attention. It's an attention-seeking behavior. Look at me, look at me. So find ways, make her the monitor maybe, do something. But I know I've never been a teacher. I know it must be very difficult. Please don't think it's easy for me to sit here and dole out solutions. It must be damn tough as a teacher. I admire the patience which all of you have. Please. But I do think that a child who is playing up, disturbing, is saying, notice me, give me attention. And requires the greatest amount of compassion. Maybe after the class, hug him and say, tell me what's happening in your life, you know.
Yeah. I know there's a question around why compassion breaks down at a societal level. Like, what has led to apathy in society, us not naturally caring for the people around us not showing self-compassion? Like, when you zoom out and look across society, where do you feel like it's broken down?
I think in the family, you hear so many prejudices against another caste, another religion. Social media blows up also again and again. Movies which show you so much hatred. So your personal role models of family are broken down. And I don't know if they were better earlier. I don't know. But I'm just saying, social media has certainly created a lot of movies. We saw one movie the other day, which was so bizarre, based on a fact. This has changed a little. I mean, gosh. And through all that, you cannot say that's why I'm not compassionate. You have to believe that human beings are all the same. As they said, if you pinch me, it hurts me. If you cut me, blood will come out, whether I'm a Hindu, Muslim, Christian, white, black. So treat human beings as coming from the same human race. The more we can do that, the more the differences will vanish. But today we are focusing on differences so much. And as teachers, I think you have to help the group to be accepting of differences. Ask a Hindu to have a friend, Muslim friend, encourage to go to each other's house, celebrate their festivals. Or a Dalit, let someone come up and say, what does it mean to be a Dalit in a society that completely looks down on you? You know, so in classrooms, if you give experiences of the sameness of human nature, then the differences which are highlighted unnecessarily, I think there is a little hope for compassion.
Yeah. There's a beautiful observation that someone has made around competition, that as educators, we're often experiencing that our children's parents want them to come first and score first and do the best and get the best opportunities. But when I get the best opportunity, someone else doesn't get that opportunity. So the relationship between competition and compassion, and what can we do to balance that a little bit more within our classrooms?
I think competition must be with yourself, your own potential. I'm capable of doing this and I'm not doing. And for that, if I'm pushed, I think with compassion, that's okay. But competition between people, I'm not at all for it. Because each one, as I said, comes with different, what do you call them, strengths, different likings. Some may like art more than maths, you know. Some may want singing, they want to excel in singing. So can we find exceptions in each child rather than looking for competition between people?
Yeah. Yeah.
Each child has something unique to offer. It may not be that you become a concert pianist or a concert singer, but gives them immense pleasure if you recognize, if that child can be made to sing quite often in class. The one who paints, can you make a picture and put it up on the wall? You know, someone who's good at sports, give them an opportunity. But don't only, if the parents want to focus only on examination and the results, that's their business. But you don't have to get into that trap.
Yeah. There's a very thought-provoking question that's just come in on why is it important to show compassion to people we dislike?
For ordinary people like you and me, it is difficult to like people who dislike you. It's difficult. But to me, it's challenging. I mean, what's so great about liking someone who likes you? What's so great? It's the most natural thing. But can I find something good? Can I find where have I done something to irritate that person? So there are a couple of people I don't have compassion towards, but at least my ill feeling has stopped completely. I would not like to be very proactively interacting with them as possible, but I wish them good luck at a distance, not compassion, there's no compassion. And the lesser people you have in that basket where you can't get along, the happier you will be.
Yeah.
It is for ordinary people. We are not Mother Teresa.
Yeah. I mean, just one last question, Anu. I can't believe we're already at the end of an hour. I feel the hour has flown by for me, and I hope everybody on the webinar has enjoyed it as well. But Anu, as you said, we're all ordinary people. We are not the Mother Teresas and the Gandhijis. So
we have Mother Teresa in us, which we haven't tapped.
Yes. So to be able to tap it, what are 2 or 3 small things that you would suggest that people do or consider doing?
Well, if I had the answer, I would have been Mother Teresa. The very not, I haven't found those answers. But I can say what has helped me, again at the cost of reputation, meditation has helped me tremendously. If there's one thing that has definitely brought my reactivity and my judgment down, is my regular meditation. I can only say that.
Yeah. Anu, thank you so much. This was so wonderful. I think out of everything you've said, the one thing that I am going to take away, besides the Godrej safe and the running after the butterfly, I love those analogies, was this line that you said, which I would leave everybody with, that everyone must become extraordinary. And what you just said now, everybody has that Mother Teresa part within them to tap into. So again, just thank you so much for this conversation, and thank you to the Firki team for organizing this, and thank you for all of you. We have so many participants on this call, and the chat window has been, I don't know if you can see it, Anu, where you are right now, but the thank you is just speeding up, and lots of appreciation. So we will copy this and send it across to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much, Anu and Shaheen, for being generous with the time and expertise today. I think it's one of the best webinars personally I've attended. It gave me time and space to think about myself as a person a lot, not in technical terms, but just as a human being. I think that would be the same experience for all of us. Thank you so much for this space. So our next webinar, all of you participants, our next webinar is going to take place on June 3rd on unpacking of what is and isn't working with at-home learning. So please look out for Firki emails in your inbox for information on this. Also, before you leave, please take a minute to give feedback on your learning experience in the webinar today. You can see this on the chat box, the link to the feedback form. Before we leave, Shaheen and Anu, can you also share like what you think about this webinar? Any thoughts, top of mind thoughts?
Sorry, before I answer that, someone has asked me to repeat the 2 books which has made an impact on me. And I'd like to say, one is our Sandeep's book, Grey Sunshine. Grey Sunshine. And the other one, the author is Jeffrey Canada, and the title of the book is Whatever It Takes. Am I right, Shine?
Yes, I'm just putting it in the chat box as well.
So these are the 2 books, and books about Gandhiji and of Gandhiji have been tremendously helpful for my life. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Shaheen, and can you also share like what you think about this webinar just to close out?
I mean, for me, I adore just chatting with Anu. So it felt like a very beautiful conversation with Anu. So thank you for that chance. And thank you all for like being so interested in the topic of compassion. I think that is a beautiful thing for us to work on for the world and for our kids.
Thank you, Shaheen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anu. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.